So what makes a good composition? For your photographs to look more like art than snapshots, we need to make it really clear what the main focus of each photograph is. You should pick one element that you'd really like your viewer's eye to be drawn towards and rest upon. There are lots of so-called rules out there for photographers, but the main thing is to get a feel for what looks good to you by thinking about what you like in your existing work and what patterns you can see in other photographers' work that you admire. Then you can take this inspiration on board for your future photos. You can try out new things and soon start making your own creative signature look so people will see a photo and instantly know it's yours, like a true artist. Talking of which, photography is an art form and it's subjective. One person may like a photo that another person absolutely hates, so don't get too stressed about following exactly what experts consider right and wrong. Photography is ultimately to be enjoyed and it's always a work in progress, so don't be afraid to experiment. What we can do though is go through some general pointers on composition to get us started on our creative journey so we can make sure our photos have a nice sense of order and do look good to most people's eye. Essential to any photo is its ability to tell a story. Think about what you want your photo to convey and the emotion you want it to provoke in your viewer. If you want to capture your children's personality and character, think about taking a photo with something that means a lot to them, like these teddies. Or you could pick something like engaging in a favourite activity, like playing with Play-Doh. When we look at a photo, our brain tries to make sense of what's happening in the scene. That's why in your pictures, everything in them needs to be relevant. Otherwise, the viewer is left wondering why something has been included and what it means. Look at this photo of Jacob. It's a nice picture, but we've got Sienna's arm at the side. This makes the photo jarring, as the arm has nothing to do with the main subject of the photo, so it causes a visual disturbance. If we crop the image to just be of Jacob, the photo looks a lot better. And it doesn't matter too much that his toy car is on the table because it relates to him. If it was a totally random object, like an ashtray from the cafe, which wouldn't have anything to do with Jacob, then that object would look totally out of place and add a distraction to the image, so it would be best to move it off the table and out of the frame. When taking a photo of a family group, the same principle applies. Think about what you want your photo to say. Is it about the love and warmth of the family unit? Or how loved your little boy is, for example? You can convey that closeness and affection through your composition. I do this by coming in really tight to my main subject and making the other members of the family be a loving frame around that person. It's important in a picture like this you just choose one person to be your main subject. Here the parents are both looking at their little boy. If my friends were to look at me in this picture rather than their son, the photo wouldn't have the same impact. Here it just looks like I accidentally cropped the photo too closely. You can use this framing technique to show love and affection in any relationship, whether it's a family or romantic couple. Any loving relationship can make a wonderful portrait by creating a composition like this, where one person is the main subject and the other person is looking tenderly at them. A high vantage point is very flattering for taking individual portraits of people, like this shot. And you can get a totally different look to your photo by crouching down low. This is great because you don't need to ask your subject to move around at all. You can get lots of different portraits just by moving yourself. I always try and get down low to eye level when taking photos of children, even if that means lying on the ground. The perspective really invites us into their world and helps the viewer feel part of what's going on. But unless your subject is very slim, be really careful when using a low vantage point. It's not a flattering angle at all and will make them look heavier than they are, which they won't thank you for. The rule of thirds is a well-known practice to help us know where to place a subject within a photo to make the image look pleasing. To take a photo using the rule of thirds, basically imagine a grid of equally spaced 3 lines horizontally and 3 lines vertically over your photo, like this. We then want our subject to be placed on one of these lines to make the photo visually appealing. So with this picture of Summer, you can see that I've left 1/3 of the photo free on the left-hand side and her face is taking up the other 2/3. The composition is very similar for this photo of my friend B's daughter. I've got her face in the right third of the shot, leaving the other 2/3 free. And for this informal group shot outside a church at a baptism, the main row of heads is along the top horizontal grid line. And my final example is my friend's daughter Darcy, who I've left a gap of the top third free in this photo. The rule of thirds helps us move our subject out of the middle of the frame, which looks better than the centre. But actually, the main thing we need to do is to allow space in front of our subject, specifically following their movement or their gaze. When taking photos of people, you want some space within the image to follow their gaze. It's something the viewer will do subconsciously. The picture will look more pleasing to the eye if you have space in front of your subject rather than behind them. Let's recap on what we've learnt in this second session on composition. Pick out one main element that you want your picture to focus on. Think about moving in closer and changing angles to create different looks without needing to move your subject. When shooting a portrait, consider creating a frame of people around your subject for an interesting composition. This will give context to the person and tells us about your subject and how loved they are. Imagine a grid of thirds across your image. Try and place your subject on one of those grid lines. Finally, leave space in front of your subject that either follows their movement or their gaze.